Welcome to the Transition Drill Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Pantiani. I appreciate you taking the time to watch, so let's get into this. Where are you from?
So I'm a bit of a Rolling Stone. I like to say, Rolling Stone gathers no moss. I was born in New Jersey. Then when I was really young, I was a baby still, I moved to Connecticut. So I lived in Connecticut from yay big till about sixth grade year. Then I moved to Florida. Went through to my junior year.
That had to be a culture shock as far as the weather.
Yeah. After my junior year, I moved back to Connecticut, and then I ended up finishing my high school career in Rhode Island. And then from there, I joined the military.
Growing up, did you have military in your family?
Nope. No one at all.
When did you know you wanted to go in the military?
I really decided that I wanted to go. So when I was in high school, I did JROTC. So it was a Navy JROTC down there. So I really enjoyed that. But the impetus was 9/11. I think like everyone, the world stopped. We're just glued to the TV. And from there, I really, I had this urge to just go in and do something. So,
but prior to 9/11, you were already kind of leaning that way, doing the junior ROTC route.
Yeah, you could say that.
When you decided to go in, what made you choose the Army as opposed to the other branches?
Well, ironically, I wanted to join the Marine Corps at first. However, when I went in medically, they wouldn't let me join the Marine Corps. So the joke is they're like, "Oh no, you're blind, have flat feet, and bad back."
So the medical requirements are different for the different branches?
I think back then they just had different standards were a little tighter on there. So each branch has their own requirements effectively. So the joke is I kind of was walking out of the recruiter's office dejected, and the Army guy's like, "Hey, come on over. I got all the jobs you want."
Going in, what were you thinking you wanted to do, or what were you leaning towards?
Originally, I wanted to do intel. I thought the idea of going in and contributing good intelligence to the fight would be interesting. I guess what made me go into armor instead is honestly they showed the video of the tank jumping over the berm, and I was 19. I was like, "Oh, that looks pretty cool."
Slightly cooler than intelligence.
Yeah.
So what year is this?
So this was 2002. So basically I tried to go in the Marine Corps in 2001. I obviously wasn't able to, so I kind of went back in 2002 and then kind of got started from there. So I did 6 months of delayed entry. So, you go into the recruiter's office, you do some light training to get up to speed. And then, July of 2002, I left to go to basic training.
With everything going on post 9/11, obviously you knew you were going to be going to war. Was your family supportive of the decision to go in the military?
I didn't tell them.
Oh. How were you able to do the delayed entry without your parents signing?
I was already 19 at that point.
Okay.
But, so I after the fact, I'm like, so I enlisted. I'm gone in a couple weeks. So they're like, "What?" Oh, well, at that point. So I had an understanding that war would happen, but I was not particularly, I would say, politically aware or really tracking what was going on at that point in my life. I understood Afghanistan and what was going on there. However, I learned that we were going to Iraq when I was in basic training, and when we were giving out orders, towards the end, my drill sergeant's like, "Oh, you're going to, this post. Oh, don't unpack because you're going to Iraq." I'm like, "Why? For what? What's there?" So
pulling out the map going, let me at least figure out where this is in the world.
Exactly. And then from there, I got out of basic training. I was on base for maybe 2 weeks. The division was already gone. Had enough time to maybe decide if I want to put a photo up, and then they were like, "Oh, you're heading out." So from there, it was November late November of 2002. I was on a plane, landed in Kuwait, and kind of waiting to see what would happen from there.
Now, at that point in your military career, were you thinking an entire career out of this? Were you thinking short term?
Well, I did my original enlistment for 6 years. So I had a thought that I would do an entire career in there. I actually re-enlisted early at 3 years in for another 6. But I ended up getting injured and so I had to get out. So that kind of blew up my plans.
So how many years did you end up doing?
I ended up doing just over 5 total. So,
and what was the injury?
I was actually hit. I was in a motor vehicle accident. Someone hit me, kind of messed my leg up, so I wasn't able to deploy for my, I guess that would have been my 3rd deployment.
How much time did you have from injury to separation?
Let's see. I had my accident in 2006, and then, I got out in 2007, so maybe about a year. Ultimately, it was because I needed a certain amount of time to go through convalescence and heal. My unit was deploying again, and they were really trying to get folks over there, get bodies over there. So my doc was like, "You need more time to heal up." So there's 2 ways this is going to go. I can, we'll send you over there, but best case scenario, you'll mess your knee up again. Worst case scenario, you'll come home in a bag. So he's like, "I'm just going to discharge you." So that's kind of the way it went. So I definitely had no plans on getting out, and that's not what I had in store for myself. So it was, you kind of got to figure out what your next thing is going to be.
When was it clear to you that the path was going to be getting out as opposed to staying in? Did you know early on? So you spent a year convalescing.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know kind of early on that the end of the ride was coming, or were you still kind of looking long term, like, no, I can get through this?
My thought was I was going to get through this and get better. It's just the way that operationally, the way things changed. They were a bit kinetic back then. So, we're in a high deployment tempo. The unit I was with, I ended up moving to a different unit. So the time I would have been back and being able to heal up, that got cut in half, basically.
So coming up on that separation, what were you thinking as far as what you were going to do after you got out?
Honestly, I thought I would probably go into law enforcement, perhaps. I did like most service members, I guess, at that time. They didn't give me a lot of resources when you were getting out as far as going through, they call it TAPS, TGPS, or whichever they want to call it, but, the transition period that you're supposed to go to. Typically, I think it's a little better now, but you're supposed to go maybe 3 to 4 months out and start doing that. That's assuming your command gives you the opportunity to do it. Didn't really get that chance to do that. So, I thought I would go either go into law enforcement or kind of go in the post office. A lot of service members do that. My mom used to work in the post office. So initially I got out and then I ended up doing that for a bit.
I actually had a previous guest who, when he came out of the Marine Corps, he actually was a postman for about a year. And initially he was enjoying it, but then kind of, this just really isn't enough for me.
Similar case for me. It was about 2 years. I was a mail carrier, and then back in Florida.
So you ended up back in Florida after you get separated from the Army.
Mm-hmm.
Mail carrier for 2 years, and then what happened?
I learned a lot. You learn a lot about government bureaucracy and kind of the way things are and the things that they don't tell you. You go into the military and what you need to do to succeed is laid out for you. Right place, right time, right uniform. It's 80% of the job. The rest you pick up, and then you have leaders who guide you along the way. When I got into the civilian landscape, that wasn't really the case. So did my job, I did it well. However, I didn't realize that there are certain steps you need to take while going into a career like that. So basically, if you wanted to take the civil service exam, you needed to do it within 2 years of you going in, because I was brought in as a transitional employee, what they called it.
Because you were already technically a government or an employee of the federal government, it was easy to bring you into the Postal Service?
Yes, it should be. It should be.
Should be. Okay.
Yeah. So basically, when you come in as a transitional employee, I think they've even gotten rid of that designation now, but basically it's like an augmentee. So they bring you on with no benefits, none of the traditional benefits you would have. However, you need to take the civil service exam within the 2 years of you going for it, and then you'll get hired. So basically, I had no idea that was supposed to happen. So I'd been kind of working and going through that process, or I'd just been working going on, and I finally asked my supervisor, I'm like, when can I take the test? He's like, oh, well, you need to take that 3 weeks ago. I'm like, okay.
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah, thanks. So it was a lot of abuse, honestly. So
coming out, was there a separation gap, or for no pun intended, did you get out on a Friday and start on Monday at the post office, or was there actually a period where you had to go through an interview and testing process with the Postal Service?
So I got out, and you get a little bit of time. So I was on unemployment for maybe 2 or 3 months as I was kind of figuring out what I was going to do. Kind of went through the postal process. It took me about a month to kind of go through that whole process, take the test, take the exam, all those things. The thing I also didn't realize, because I wasn't tracking that much, is when I got out, it was 2007. So that was not a good time to not have a job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of when the bottom of the world fell out, Great Recession and all that good stuff. So, a lot of the options I thought I would have had getting out, they weren't there. So I did the post office for as long as I could kind of do that work, but there really was no growth, no opportunity to really move up and kind of make a career out of it. So that, and I had experienced a couple drive-bys on my route where I was at. So the joke is, I'm like, I almost got shot at as much in the post office as I did when I was active duty. So
people don't think about the fact that mail's still got to get delivered into some of the worst neighborhoods in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as you becoming a postal employee, you talked about how you were supposed to take the civil service exam within 2 years. Even if you would have taken the exam within those 2 years, were you not thinking that was your future path? Were you already kind of thinking that it was a short-term stopgap?
It was more of I didn't really had a plan. So coming up, didn't get a lot of reinforcement for college and saying how that's, a viable path for me. So I didn't really think that was an opportunity. So I figured, I'll go do that. That's a fine, perfectly good job. I can do that, get benefits, and just kind of keep tracking.
Did you have the GI Bill?
I did, yes. So what I ended up doing after that, I decided I was going to attempt to go to school part-time. So, I started community college, kind of gave it a couple fits and starts there.
All while you're in Florida.
Mm-hmm. And then eventually didn't work out quite the way I wanted it to. And then they came out with the new GI Bill, the post 9/11 GI Bill, which the benefits were a lot further expanded. So when I got out, we were still using the Montgomery GI Bill, which is, the benefits were far less than what they are to this day now. So once that came out, my family was back up north in Rhode Island and Connecticut. So I figured, what, I'll take the chance and head up there and go to school.
So moving back to Rhode Island, specifically with the intention of just getting school knocked out and then going from there,
mm-hmm.
What were you leaning towards as far as your education route?
I was looking to go into engineering. I was kind of looking at, all right, what's the best It's the best paying job that I can do that will provide me the best opportunity. A lot of my uncles are engineers, and so as I was seeking educational advice from them and kind of where to go, because I was initially thinking go to online school like University of Phoenix or something like that as an opportunity. So they said, well, maybe take a look at some of these other options, maybe try some of these things, take a look at this, maybe look at the state schools. And so as I was going through it, I started to learn more about what educational benefits are really provided, per state, per institution and whatnot.
And what year was this?
So this was in 2010.
So the whole online learning was just probably getting more prevalent at this point.
Yes.
So what school did you end up at first?
So I ended up going to the Community College of Rhode Island there. And I was very excited to go. So first off, in trying to get signed up for classes, I was trying to do it remotely from Florida, calling the school and trying to figure out what we need to do. And the initial experience, and I don't fault this school. I think it's more, no one was really used to dealing with veterans at this point. So it was hard. It was hard to kind of work with folks and figure out what I needed to do even.
At this point, is there no source of resource for you as a veteran to kind of help you through this process?
No, not at that point.
So you enroll at Rhode Island Community College
mm-hmm.
and studying towards engineering.
Yep.
And then how did you end up with the student veteran group?
So the irony is I was on campus and I saw a flyer on the wall for a student veteran group. I said, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's check this out. Then I met, a good friend of mine now, Anthony Panalino. So he was starting the veterans group on campus there, and I found that camaraderie I was missing. I'd say one of the things that I was dealing with on the way out was some unresolved PTSD, as well as some injuries that I've had when I was in IED blasts, TBI, those kind of things. So I had initially signed up for all, take a full load of classes, thinking I'm going to go hard charge and run into it. And I immediately failed my first semester, like all my classes, because I just had a lot I needed to work through and seek help for.
Were you, as odd as this might sound, I'm sure you were aware of how you were feeling and the symptoms that you were experiencing, but were you equating it at that time with PTSD?
No, not initially. The reason I ended up really getting involved with the VA and seeking help is my girlfriend, who I've been with for a long time at this point. She mentioned that I think in my sleep I was having a nightmare or something, and I guess I almost attacked her in my sleep, and I didn't realize it. And so she was like, "Hey, you just tried to choke me out, and you need to see someone. You need to deal with this, otherwise I'm not going to stay."
Were you open to it, or were you kind of resistant to the idea that you were going to go talk to somebody?
Initially, I was very resistant. I think at the time when I was getting out there, or at the time when I was in, PTSD was not. It was a career killer, basically. If you say you need help, say you need to say you're feeling some kind of way, it'll kill your career effectively. So
the suck it up, buttercup, just move on and deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much.
How much did it, looking back on it, were you aware at the time when you were, for no better term, forced out of the military? How much did that impact you, just losing that aspect of your life?
It impacted me pretty hard. I had been with basically the same group of guys for 5 years. Almost my entire time I was in the same unit with the same people for the most part. So they become that second family you had. So getting out, I kind of felt like I was, off to the wolves effectively, just out there trying to figure it out on your own.
I'm assuming lost contact with probably most or all of them?
Quite a few, yeah. There's some I still keep up with, but yeah, you kind of lose touch.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
So you're back up in Rhode Island. You started school, but now you failed your first semester.
Mm-hmm.
What was that transition? I mean, how'd you get kind of back on track?
It was really finding that veteran group on campus and finding a new group, that unit away from the unit, so to speak, and then finding some purpose in helping other veterans who are going through this, how to move through this experience effectively.
And so did you end up moving on from Rhode Island Community College as far as your educational experience?
Yes. Took me a bit, but I did. I ended up moving on to the University of Rhode Island. I ended up changing majors, and I switched to economics.
And getting that degree, what was your intention to do?
I thought I would probably end up in either government or maybe nonprofit. Along the way, while I was going to school, through helping veterans and learning about all the different resources, because part of what we did with our veteran group on campus was to research benefits and things that are available to you. So really got involved on campus, student government, and working with the different organizations, talking with professors, and really starting to peel back the layers of what's actually available. It's I would say, like in any system, if you pick up a computer, how much of that powered, how much of the resources do we actually use on this, unless you're a power user, so to speak. So you start really peeling back the different quote settings and whatnot, and really understanding what this can do. Same thing with an institution. It has a ton of more resources than you think are available. So,
but like when you came out of the military, if you don't know what those resources or those assets are, you don't even know how to use them.
Exactly. You don't even know what you're missing effectively. You don't know what you don't know.
When did you make the switch to being a user of the system to somebody who wanted to be an asset and helping somebody else coming behind you?
The moment someone did that for me, basically.
So as soon as you got to the Rhode Island Community College, you then became a helper or an employee of the student veteran group?
I was a member of the student veteran group, and then from there we just sought to fill a need as we saw it. My experience coming in to trying to enroll in classes was rough. Understanding what veteran benefits are available to students, to veterans specifically, was hard. How do you apply your GI Bill benefits? How do you work with the certifying official? They have a disability waiver that you can use. So if you have a service connection, you're eligible for that. But if you don't know to ask for that, then you won't effectively. So what we saw is veterans they tend to be a group that doesn't really, they don't complain much. They don't really. Basically, if they can meet these basic needs, where do I get my books? How do I go to class? How do I leave? Those are kind of the main three things.
They're not usually the squeaky wheel asking 1,000 questions.
Exactly.
So while you were doing this, were you seeking treatment for or assistance for PTSD?
Yes.
Was that also facilitated through the student veteran group, or did you have to do that on your own?
It was on my own, but because we became so ingrained in campus, and Rhode Island's very small, so we had the opportunity to really meet and understand the different benefits that the state provided, as well as the VA. So in me going to seek out help at the VA, I was able to meet folks, learn about their programs, and then say, hey, can we bring those programs back to the campus so for other veterans who don't know how to use this, or for folks to understand even using the GI Bill. Oh, I might be running out of benefits. What can we do next? You start talking with your VA counselors, start talking with the mental health folks, and you try and tie all that together, because basically I just want to make sure that we can bring any and all resources back to the campus for our veterans to be able to use it.
And when you transitioned to the four-year college, did you stay active with the veteran assistants?
I did. Yep.
Same program, just at a different school, or was it a completely different program?
So they had their own veterans organization. So, we worked to help them scale up and provide the same benefits on campus as well. Each campus, each institution, I think as you would know, you've worked in multiple departments and jurisdictions, each has its own politics and pathways to work through, I guess. So it was basically learning who the folks are who can make the decisions. Is a word I'm looking for, but I'm missing it at this moment.
That's okay. And when did it become clear that working with veterans was actually going to become your future, your pathway?
It just kind of fell into it, because in doing this on campus, we were able to get these benefits. Then we saw that, how can we help bring these benefits to the other campuses in the state, other institutions? Working with Anthony, we were able to found a veterans organization, nonprofit, and worked on veteran policy at the State House. So it just kept, as we kept peeling it back, there was just more and more things that we realized that we could help accomplish.
So basically, it kind of sounds like, because it wasn't in place initially, being part of the force driving it forward, just kind of, you got sucked up in the wave moving forward,
basically
going with it.
It's, you find a need, fill a need. And considering my background and, where I came up and came from, considering it's a small state like Rhode Island's very, I would say, insular, and Rhode Island's known as a NOAA guy state. So I didn't think I'd ever be one of those people who knows a person. But as resources do become available, I just want to make sure that you just pass them on, because if someone did it for me, I wouldn't be able to do the things I've been able to do. So I want to make sure that the next person has the opportunity. So that's really the driving force on really anything that I do.
That need to constantly give back, finding your new purpose, so to speak.
Yes.
So after graduation, you have a degree now in economics. Did you go towards that path, or did you stay in the veteran assistance realm? So
I ended up going into government from there. So I ended up working for one of our members of Congress in Rhode Island. I ended up being the commencement speaker at the community college. So the congressman was there, and he was like, "Hey, I like what you're doing there. Maybe you want to come, do some of this work in my office." So as I was going to school at the University of Rhode Island, I was actually working for one of the congressmen. So basically, I was the Veterans Affairs coordinator and then the grants coordinator. So it was taking this knowledge and providing benefits, but learning it from the federal government side and being able to work at the higher levels of the VA to bring these benefits here. So when veteran constituents would come and they had issues that they needed to work out, we were able to, use those channels to cut through red tape and, get people the services that they need, and then being a conduit just for anything else that they needed. So
you definitely switched to a role where you're really kind of seeing behind the curtain on how the bureaucracy works.
Mm-hmm.
And in making that transition, one of the things I want to go backwards on, though, quite the accomplishment when you think about it, of your first semester, you failed out, to going to the point of giving the commencement speech at graduation. Quite an accomplishment.
Didn't expect it. They basically, I didn't even know who nominated me, honestly. But effectively, what I was told is, you've given and then some to the campus community and made it better for this work. That was started by Anthony when he moved on to his next campus. Kind of grabbed the baton and kept going with it, and tried to leave something sustainable so the next person can keep it going from there.
So how long were you with the government, so to speak, working for this?
So I did that for a little over almost 2 years again. And then I ended up going over to General Dynamics.
Which ultimately brought you out here to California.
Yes.
Was there an interest to leave Rhode Island? Or I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, any reservations coming to California?
I mean, you build your network, you know how to, you reach a point where you understand what you're doing, you know who all the players are to achieve the things you want to achieve, to continue doing that service. So that was, I would say, the big reservation in leaving and kind of uprooting and coming out here. Never lived on the West Coast, don't really have any network out here on the West Coast. So that was trying for sure. But we were able to, continue doing this type of work and bring benefit to try and add value and show that veterans add value to what we're doing.
How'd you find the transition going over to General Dynamics? A good company to work for, supportive of you and the veterans, obviously?
Yeah, absolutely. Great thing with General Dynamics is, the lion's share of the company, the products we build, services that we provide are for the U.S. military. So it was almost like coming home in a sense. I didn't know it at the time, but General Dynamics makes the Abrams tank that I used in the military. That very tank saved my life more than once, surviving IED blasts and whatnot. So I truly see the value in the products that we provide, and being able to be on the other side, from my role as a recruiter, military program lead, whatnot, is to find the best people to continue to do that service so we can continue to serve those who are still serving.
So how long have you been doing that job now?
So just about a little over 4 years, or next year will be 4 years. There.
And as far as making that transition, what's your role now? What within the company as far as what you're doing with veterans?
So right now I am a strategic outreach specialist at our NASCO division here in San Diego. What I do is I am the military program lead for the organization. So I go out, recruit prior service, military, reservists, veterans that come into the company and find that place for folks. Also, I work on our veterans employee resource group. We try to work to bring external benefits, external resources into our veteran population here as well. And I do community outreach, so I work with external organizations as well and try and find different talent channels for the company.
With what you're doing now, does it fill that void that you kind of had?
It does. It allows me to, I would say, when a lot of folks are transitioning, myself as well, when I was deployed, we knew there were contractors out there. We know that there are a lot of large military contractors who we work with, and the defense contractors are almost this thing we hold on high as like, wow, if I can really just get in there because, it's a good paying job. You're working for an organization that supports the mission. You're still having the opportunity to give back, but it always seems like a black box. Think of it as defense contractors, consulting, those organizations. Think of that as the Ivy League of getting out of the military. these are where you want to go. But unless you have that network, unless you had the right job in the military, you don't really expect that you're going to have the opportunity to go there. So me being able to be in this company, particularly on the talent acquisition side as a recruiter, I can show there is a path in here. You do have this skill set. It's just a matter of how do we translate that so the rest of the recruiters, the rest of the people, the hiring managers can look at you and see what I see as a candidate. So it's great in that I get to help our veterans, help our military members really bring out their best selves so they can be the strongest candidate they can be for these organizations. It's 12 now.
Oh,
yeah.
So from when you left to now, obviously working on this entity of helping veterans on a daily basis, how are you seeing the changes as far as military people and their transition today compared to what it was when you came out? Has it changed in a positive way?
I would say so. Some of the things that I've noticed is veterans are transitioning service members are a bit more aware of what is available to them. In that, I would say each of the branches has gotten a lot better on transition, in making sure that there is a more of a smoother handoff between, if you have medical issues, your medical issues into the VA. So the branches have done fairly well, and the VA as well, and tying those together so it's a little bit more seamless. The transition classes have gotten a lot better. So folks are really at least have an idea of what they want to do when they get out. And that's been better. So a lot of it is really just saying, okay, I'm getting pinged by folks a little bit earlier in the process saying, all right, well, I want to get out and I think I want to work for this company. Let me reach out to you. So I'll get messages on LinkedIn or whatnot. And folks are asking, hey, what can I do to get in here? What are some of the things?
What do you think's driven this change?
There has been at least over the last, I would say 10 years, there was a strong emphasis on, trying to stamp out veteran homelessness and making sure that veterans had the opportunity to be successful upon the end of service, considering the high operational tempo that the country asks of our service members. And, our society has gotten to a point where we want to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind, like has been happening in the past.
General Dynamics only seeks employees for General Dynamics, or do you assist in placing employees with a variety of companies?
So I work specifically with General Dynamics. That said, you meet enough recruiters on the road when you're out recruiting, you meet folks from other companies. So if a veteran wants to get somewhere, I'll do my best to help them get to wherever it is they're trying to go, even if it's not with us.
So now is your chance to kind of be that voice of reason. What are the key points that you would tell somebody as far as planning their transition? How long out should they be doing this? What are some of the do's and don'ts?
I could spend an hour talking about that, but what I would say is there's kind of two things you want to think about. It's, do you have a geographic zone? Do you have a type of company or industry you want to work for? So I would say industry, where do you want to be? Or do you have a specific company? Think about that. The other things you want to think about it, what do you see yourself doing on a daily basis? Do you see yourself leading individuals? Do you want to work on projects? Are you more of an individual contributor? Do you want to be a subject matter expert? These are all these things that you kind of want to start thinking about as you go through it. Then from there, you start doing your research. Start researching if geographic location is your main focus. Start picking the parts of the country you want to live in, and then seeing what industries are prevalent there, and then you can start your search there. If it's, I really want to get into this industry, research what are the companies in this industry that do it. For me, in trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I had a very, very narrow scope and a shallow depth of information, I guess, getting out. So for me, all I heard was you would take they have those career translators when you get out. I'm not particularly a fan of them. I know some people might really like them. I don't like them because you get put in a box. So for me as a tanker getting out, when I plug my MOS into it, it says, hey, you can be cop, security guard, janitor, like the 3 things it told me I could do, which is nothing wrong with that. However,
just seems like an odd mix from coming from being on a tank crew.
Exactly. It's because there's not a direct translation between combat arms roles and the rest of, the civilian world. So there are roles that do have direct translation. So if you are a communication specialist, you can plug that in and you'll find a bunch of things. So it really depends on what you do. So for me, I didn't want to be limited to just these 3 things, because the program spit this out and said, this is what I can do. So I was able to really see what was available to me in going to school. So the other part of it that I would say is the networking. Networking is huge. It's pretty much the whole game. Once you've narrowed down either location, company, or industry, you want to start networking. You really want to start talking to folks and really understand what it is you're trying to do and get into. 1 second.
Oh, you're good.
So once you've identified that, then you start talking to people within that space. And then you look for programs that are available that can provide even some immersion into some of these areas that you're looking at. So if you really want to be in a defense contractor, they have programs for exiting service members, DoD Skill Bridge, for example, where companies take on what we call them military fellows at General Dynamics. But basically, you can come in up to 180 days before you get out of the service. You can spend time, learn about the company. You're actually inside the company. You're doing work. You're seeing the culture. You're understanding what it is that you're doing.
And you're able to do this while you're still active?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so on a time zone or a timeline, how early should you be looking at these transition drills? I'm trying to steal my podcast name, but when should they start doing this networking and reaching out and doing these visits or immersions?
So at least a year and a half out, honestly. You can start having initial conversations a year and a half out, so 18 months out. You've gotten in your mind, you're at that, I guess it would be 17 and a half years, or you're thinking, I'm probably not going to re-up for this next rodeo. I think I'm going to hang up my hat. So that's, as soon as you have that thought, barring, an injury or something that forces your hand and you have to get out, as soon as you make the decision that I want to get out, that's when you need to start having these conversations and start doing that research.
And ultimately it falls down to, kind of sounds like you really got to make one of 2 choices. Are you going to make your decision based on where do you want to end up living, or what do you want to end up doing for a job? The 2 primary factors?
Yeah, I would say those are the two main ones. And this is just for if you just want to get out and go work somewhere. Now, maybe you want to go into an industry that is completely outside of your wheelhouse. Now you're thinking, okay, I need to go to school. Now what? So the next thing you should be is if I want to go back, get my degree or credential up so I can get these roles, now you're thinking, what school has said program that I want to do? Where does the school rank? What are the benefits that they have available for me as a veteran on these campuses? What kind of support will I get? Cost of living, how much will this cost for you to even go to school to do these things? So these are all the things that you start thinking about as you're making the decision. So, region or company, industry. If I don't have the credentials for said industry, now how do I get those credentials for said industry? Kind of like that.
Can you get most or all of your college out of the way before you separate from the military? Can you actually do all of that as opposed to getting out and then having to go to school?
You can, absolutely. Definitely takes a lot more dedication and a true focus on what you want to do. So, if you're going while active duty, there are lots of programs that cater towards service members that have partnerships. Even within your branch, they have opportunities. So if you're enlisted and you're trying to, these are more early on in your career, these conversations and thoughts you may have, but there are lots of ways. There's professional military education you can do while you're in active duty. So if you're, mid-career and you're thinking, all right, I want to attain next ranks, do this, they'll send you to school. If you're enlisted and you want to go be an officer, you can take time out and get your degree that way and then come back in as an officer. There's those opportunities. If you get out and you still want to knock your school out, you can just transition from active duty to National Guard or a reserve component. So there's a lot of things you can do. And there are I would say most military posts have an educational partner that they work with on either, if not on posts, nearby, that you can work to and work with and knock out your degree. It's going to take a little more dedication. Don't maybe not go ham on the weekends as much, spend a little more time knocking these out as you go along, but you can certainly knock out a lot of that work prior.
With what you do each day, is the men and women that you're dealing with more enlisted or officer or kind of 50-50?
More enlisted for who I deal with, for the type of folks that we hire. Other divisions, because of the nature of their work, they may have more of a mix between officers and those type of roles. So for me, I hire a lot of what you call touch labor, trades work, first and second level managers, those supervision. So I tend to hire a lot more enlisted folks for these opportunities. Some other divisions, so like our sister unit, mission systems, they have a lot of TS cleared roles for their programs, and they have a lot of program management opportunities within their organization. So they give more of a mix from that subject matter expert to officers who are coming in and managing programs and projects.
Is there an ideal skill set that somebody should have to get hired by what you place?
So specifically for me, what I would look for, I look more for soft skills, honestly. So we have in-house training at our company. So if you wanted to come in as a trades individual, we'll teach you. If you already have a trade, so we'll use the Navy for an example. Our machinist mates, our electricians, our electronics techs, those folks, I can come in and kind of place you directly. If you don't have that skill set, we can teach it to you. So we do have that as an opportunity. For our engineers, we hire a decent amount of engineers as well. For those who have, some leadership background, so your mid-level NCO, first level and mid-level NCOs, non-commissioned officers, we have opportunities for them as well to come in as area managers or, ships managers, tests and trials, our organization there. If you have a supply chain background, we have opportunities for folks in the supply chain realm. We have a lot that we do offer.
With the whole COVID pandemic and the switch over, at least on the civilian side, to remote working and working from home and stuff like that, are you seeing that aspect from the veteran community or General Dynamics, those type employers, or is it still largely in person?
Well, for us, because we are more of a heavy manufacturing, it's going to be more in person. There are some people who work remote. It's more of a case by case. Other units within GD are heavily, have a lot more flexibility for that. So for our IT focused businesses, our more white collar positions, there is a lot more opportunities for remote work.
Do you find that most job opportunities are going to be in and immediately around existing military bases? So for instance, we're here in San Diego. There's got to be a large amount of work for somebody who's going to stay in this area, or is it pretty much spread out across the country?
It depends. You will find that there is a defense contractor who services each type of base that's available or around. For example, we have General Dynamics has personnel on almost every single military base in the country, just about. For our heavy manufacturing, so ship repair and ship manufacturing like we do, we're going to be clustered obviously around Navy facilities. For our like GDIT, GD Mission Systems, those organizations, they're going to be a lot more spread out around the country. So they can work remote. They can have small teams that support, whichever product or weapon system or whatnot that they're working on each of these bases. But our large facilities are going to be more of our manufacturing organizations, and then they're going to be clustered in certain areas.
So it's entirely feasible that somebody could go from being deployed and stationed at a particular military base, separate from the military, and be right back on that base as a civilian contractor?
Yeah, that happens quite a bit.
So something I would like to go back to, as we talked about earlier, the whole PTSD thing I'm finding is a much bigger, not that I didn't have an idea of how big the issue was, but the number of people that it's really touching at some level. And going back to your story, what advice would you give to somebody who's dealing with that or not dealing with it?
I would say there is absolutely no shame in, admitting to yourself. I think that's the first. That if you're feeling some kind of way, if you're feeling that you need help, there's nothing wrong with it. And I would say that for me, the biggest critic, the person who was most hard on myself for needing help was me. Everyone has been supportive. Everyone I've dealt with has always been supportive, but it's taking that first step and admitting to yourself that if you need help, help's out there. Don't suffer in silence. You don't have to.
Don't think that asking for help is being a failure.
Exactly.
Now, did you find that there was one particular thing other than just getting counseling that really kind of helped, or was it just merely getting in and talking to someone?
Getting in and talking to someone and giving back has been very cathartic for me. In sharing my story, in letting people know that, if you need an ear, if you need anyone to talk to, whichever, I try to be there because people were there for me. So in giving of myself for others has been very healing for me. It can be rough at times too, because in doing that, I hear a lot of stories and I hear a lot of similarities to my own. And, sometimes you're brought back to places you don't want to be. But overall, in having the opportunity to this help people get through what they're getting through, it's been really, really helpful.
If I'm not going too personal, do you still seek counseling?
I do.
So for somebody who's in that position, the idea that you've got to get to a point where you can deal with it, but it's not, again, not a sense of failure if today you feel okay and tomorrow you don't. That doesn't necessarily mean that getting counseling didn't work for you. It sounds like it's an ongoing process that constantly you have to address.
It's a process. For me, it's an ongoing process. It might always be one for me. But you have good days, you have bad days. But being able to go and talk to someone and process these things. And the good thing about going to counseling or talking to the VA or whoever you seek your counseling from is, a good counselor, they're not going to give you the answer. They're not going to tell you, do this and then everything is great. It's going to be, they're just going to help you process what you're dealing with.
They know how to ask the right question to get you going down the right pathway.
Exactly.
And how much does it help? You mentioned that in talking to veterans, sometimes it can take you down a road maybe you don't want to go down. But do you find that it actually ends up helping you to go down that road every once in a while and still be able to come back out of it?
It does. I went through a VA study recently, and it was called episodic. It's a type of episodic counseling where they make you kind of go in deep, relive the thing, that's been at least a particular thing that was that may have been the genesis of what's going on. You really go and relive it, process it. I joke and call it basically you go and you pick the scab. You'll feel rough afterwards. I put some ointment on it, but we'll pick it some more and keep cleaning it out, clean all the junk out of there, and putting context to what you experienced, because a lot of what you see and a lot of what you may have dealt with is external, is your own factors tied in with external factors that are maybe even clouding it, and you lose the context of what you experienced.
Well, you bring it up a good point. You make a good analogy of kind of picking at the scab. And it almost kind of seems like that's the aspect of healing. You've got to get it to where the scab goes away and all that's left is a scar. The scar is going to be there to remind you, but it doesn't bleed every day.
Yeah.
If that's a decent analogy.
Your trauma may be a part of you, but it doesn't have to define you.
Any last words of wisdom you could throw out to our veteran community?
For veterans, just know that there is a world of benefits and a world of resources that are out there for you. I have yet to find a single person who does not want to help you achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. And I'll leave you with this. It's a pet peeve of mine. Do not take a cell phone selfie for your LinkedIn photo. Please.
Rule number 1, don't take a selfie.
Mm-hmm.
How important is a LinkedIn account?
It's incredibly important at this point. I would say most recruiters are on there at this point. And the really cool thing about LinkedIn is you may have folks you worked with who are at the company that you want to go to. So at a minimum, there are veterans at the company you want to work to. So you can always reach out to someone and say, hey, I saw you on LinkedIn. You're at X company. How can I do what you do? I'm really curious. Let's chat. Most people will help you.
You really start seeing how small the world really is when you really start looking at the world.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate your time, sir.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking your time to listen to the podcast. I truly hope you enjoyed it. Not only is the podcast available on audio platforms, but you can also watch it on YouTube at the Transition Drill Podcast channel. Please subscribe for future episodes. The best way you can help the show is by getting the word out. If you think somebody else might enjoy it, I would appreciate it if you would share it with them. Also, if you have the time, please go to Apple Podcast and leave me a rating. I welcome your feedback, both positive and negative. You can also go to the website, transitiondrillpodcast.com, and through the Contact tab, send a message directly to my email with any comments or suggestions. Thank you again, and I hope you tune in for the next one.